YouTube and live on
on Zaman,
the other YouTube. All right, so we're live. I want to just check to make sure you can see and hear us on YouTube and Facebook. So welcome. I'm just gonna quickly check everybody. Let's see. To talk a little bit to make sure that there's
everything's working.
Yeah. Welcome, Sheila. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me
on this special live stream about web performance. It's going to be interesting. Okay, great. So they can see and hear us. That's cool. All good on YouTube community, YouTube. Let's just hear on Facebook. Get some confirmation. All good on Facebook. All right. So we're live. So thank you very much for joining us on this live stream about website performance. We're going to talk about everything that's got to do with website performance with Sheila over here. He's a product lead and knows a lot about website performance optimization, a lot of technical stuff. So it's going to be cool. And what's on the agenda? So first, we're going to talk about what website performance actually is and how it's related to Google Core Web Vitals. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about the caching layers. A CDN we're going to talk about, Content Delivery Network. Also, we're going to see a practical example of Elementor Hosting's built-in caching tool. Also talk about autoscale, accelerated plugins, and some more. Mm-hmm. Also, we've got a live Q&A session and a special post-stream discount. So after the stream, we'll share that link. So please stay tuned. And Sheila, let me just do this. The stage is yours.
Okay. So let's start.
All right, go for it.
I think that
Sorry, yes. What do you think?
I think that the topic is very interesting, and I love it. Especially, I loved it. I worked on the hosting and the plugins performance for a while, and I think that the most interesting part is there's a perception in terms of what performance is, and before understanding how you can optimize your site and reach the 100 score that you see here on the Lighthouse tests, or
right. This is the score we always like to see. 100
green, the green light.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah. It means that there's a perception that speed equals performance. And right. I think this is not the case.
Speed is when you visit the site, www.yoursite.com, it loads fast. Exactly. Speed.
Yeah. So it's not. It's a myth. And let's break it down. The first thing when discussing the performance score, it used to be really performance. I logged into a website. There were a lot of lousy tactics to just load everything without any styles, without any JavaScript, and then load everything. It created a cluttered experience. So in 2020, Google introduced Core Web Vitals. This is a set of metrics, 3 metrics, by the way, that represents the actual behavior of experience when browsing your website. Basically, it answers 3 major questions. The first one is the page visual. It's visible. Okay, this is the first one. It's represented by a metric called LCP. We'll discuss it in a bit. The second question that it answers is the page interactable? You can interact with it, and it responds to your interactions.
So interacting means scrolling, clicking.
Exactly. Clicking, using keyboard touches. When trying to click on a menu item, for example. If the menu is cluttered, not opening, it's a problem. Right. It's not a good experience. So this is another thing that is being handled by those Core Web Vitals, and the metric that corresponds with it, called FID, First Input Delay. And recently, it got transitioned into a new metric called INP, Interaction to Next Paint. And we'll deep dive into those again. And the last metric is CLS, Cumulative Layout Shift. Was the experience of browsing and browsing throughout the website stable? I can visit a page and everything loads and moves and just shaky.
Right. Sometimes it happens that you're scrolling and it's just loaded, and then you see something and it just quickly jumps or moves.
Exactly. And you misclick on an item and you add it to cart, or you exit pop-up or click on an ad.
You think that they're playing with you, you try to click the button and it just doesn't.
And before 2020, before Google introduced Core Web Vitals, the ranking that Google used to have wasn't just the performance experience. They were more of criteria such as security using SSL certificate. It was, are you using a mobile-friendly version of your website? More and more Web Vitals, they called it. In 2020, they introduced the core Web Vitals, which represents the actual experience.
So how does that relate to the 100 score?
So the 100 score is a metric that we should strive towards to, but it's not core Web Vitals per se. And to understand better what it means, we have to deep dive into the report itself. And when discussing the report, there are many tools. Google to help users understand what to improve and how to improve. They've introduced a new tool, open source tool called Lighthouse.
Right.
The Lighthouse is an audit tool for a lab environment, and contrary to the Core Web Vitals one, which represent the actual field experience.
So this is like when you're testing your website speed, you can go to the page speed, or you can go to
on demand,
right?
And emulate the behavior of a customer, of a visitor, and then get this score.
Right.
And this score is consists of out of 6 metrics, in contrary to Core Web Vitals, which consists of the 3.
Those are the main 3.
Yeah, exactly. And the first 6 are, as you can see here, first, contentful paint. This means if I'm trying to put it on a timeline, let's try to understand how your browser and any website works.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when you try to click in and type, let's
www.elementor.com.
Exactly. What happens?
Enter.
In your browser, there is an internal queue. Once you click go, the field, the URL enters this queue. Later on, it tries to resolve what is this name, elementor.com. What is it? It is it's just mask for an actual IP,
right.
Actual tool.
So it's a DNS.
Exactly.
Right.
It's called a DNS. And
so
again,
a DNS is like a phone number. Is Shiloh, your phone number is 0, whatever your phone number is. Your number is related to your name.
Exactly. And later on, it has some security measurements, TLS, and more. And after all of these measures are being met, the request is arriving the server, the actual server. Now the server got a request that mentions Ziv from Chrome browser, tried to reach out to the website. What should I fetch? What should I respond? And then it computes and generates some stuff and brings you back some HTML file. The HTML file is an instruction file, so manifest, that lets the browser know how to interpret it and how to present it.
Right.
There are 2 parts of presentation. The first one is getting all the information. By the way, quick small note, this is called time first byte. We'll discuss it in a bit. And then later on, the browser starts to render the page. Render and paint. The rendering is it's a process, and the painting is the actual presentation of the elements on a page.
So this could be the images, the text,
exactly.
All of the other
images, text,
elements,
JavaScript files, CSS files, videos, iframes, etc. Okay,
right.
Those are this is the way it works. So the first metric that we try to see is first contentful paint. The browser got the input, got the information it needs to interpret into a page, and starts rendering it and painting it on the actual page.
This could be colors. This could be
it can
text,
be a color. It can be the component. The first component on your page.
First element.
First component. Let's say I'm seeing the background of my header. This is the first contentful paint.
Right.
This metric should be fairly load fairly speed, and it should be less than 1.8 seconds. This is the threshold. This is a good behaving performance. Okay. Later on, we have the speed index. Speed index, let's skip this and go back in a bit.
Okay.
We have the largest contentful paint. If we discuss the first contentful paint, the second is largest contentful paint. The largest contentful paint represents the largest element, same as the first contentful paint, but the largest meaningful element that is present on the website. And this metric represents the appearance of the visual appearance of the website. So
this could be like, let's say, an image generally is a big picture in the background, maybe.
It's the time that it took the browser to paint, to construct the largest element.
Right.
But basically, most of the times, it's an image, background image, it's a video, it's an iframe map, those kind of things. Okay. Afterwards, you have the speed index. Speed index represents, it measures the time it takes the loading process of all visual parts of the website. Basically, from 0 to 100, how much time it took to the page to visually appear in 100%.
100%.
Okay. It's not necessarily the most important part of the loading, but it's something that you should keep in mind when optimizing and making sure your website looks good.
Right.
Later on, we have another metric called time to interactivity. The time to interactivity metric is basically the time it takes to the page to become fully interactive. Okay, to respond to every
interactive means just like we mentioned before, scrolling, clicking.
Exactly. In the backend, in the more technical way, it's the time it takes for all the JavaScript to be executed, run, and completed,
ready to interact for any clicks and
if you have on every browser, and every browser runs on every computer, there's a dedicated thread, computer's CPU thread, and when it finishes loading and processing all of your website, it's fine. And the time to interactivity is a metric that you should take into consideration. But again, it's not the most important one.
Right.
The two last metrics are, the first one is total blocking time. This is a metric that is relevant only to lab data, lab examinations, such as page speed test, GTmetrix, pingdom, etc., or web page test. All of them use these metrics to emulate the actual user behavior of trying to click an element. And what it measures the time it takes for the main thread of the browser when it's occupied. It takes the longest task and says, this was the longest task. It was clogged for, let's say, 100 milliseconds, and this is how it loads. You should strive to minimize it as much as possible, and a good score is less than 200 milliseconds.
So blocking time really needs to be super fast, milliseconds, and
most of the things that affects it are large JavaScript files, large unused JavaScript files, redundant code that runs in the background and clogs your CPU thread. Okay, so this is another important area that you should look into.
Right.
The last one is cumulative layout shift, which represents the visual stability. When loading your website, you can post-load some aspects. You can load images while they are lazy. Okay, you can just delay their loading later on. And sometimes, if you won't specify the specific dimensions, won't save space for them, or load elements in Ajax, it can push content. I'm sure that you already.
This is when certain areas of the website just move and shift. And,
exactly. You read an article and then again, boom,
right.
The advert is loaded and all the content is pushed. This is not a good experience.
So that's the CLS. That's the cumulative layout shift.
Exactly.
All right.
But they're all not sharing the same weight. And if we try to break it down to the score and to understand where we should optimize and where we should put our main focus on, you can see here the breakdown. You can see that we have the 100 score that you should strive to. It consists out of 25% of it is LCP, the largest contentful paint, how much time it took for the largest element to load above the fold. The total blocking time, which
takes up a big portion as well.
Yeah, again, it's an important metric that represents the interactivity. Can I interact with the website? And the other big area is the CLS, cumulative layout shift, which represent 25 of the percentage. You can see other speed index and FCP, first contentful paint, are again here. And I don't think we should focus on them because most of the time, when speaking of Elementor's performance and Elementor hosting and all websites, the most issues are reflected by the largest contentful paint. From an analysis we conducted, you can see that most of Elementor websites are good on total blocking time, unless you did some wanky things there, are good on CLS, unless you did some weird stuff. But on LCP, you have many things that can affect this. You can use unoptimized images. You can use a slow server. You can use you can build your website in a way that it will load assets before they're needed.
Right. So we're going to be focusing on LCP and how to improve that.
Exactly. The error margin there is the largest one.
Right. And there's a couple of strategies, right, to do that.
Exactly. Before understanding how you can improve it and visiting the tactics, I think we should double down on another aspect that affects the largest content of paint. Again, if I bring you back to the analogy of a field strip, a timeline.
Yeah.
You hit go on your browser.
Enter. I want to visit the website.
Exactly. What happens then is the website travels, the data travels, just like electricity or light. It travels throughout from your browser to your server, and then the server renders everything. Okay. Once it's rendering the data, it takes time. The data processing takes time, and then it brings the data back to you. So there are two metrics that you should take into consideration. The first one is time to first byte, TTFB, it's called. And the server, it represents the server response time.
And a byte, what is that? That's like a data
piece of code, a piece of data, one and zeros. Okay? When you get a byte of data, you can know that the data transfer started. The server got your response, and it also responded you.
Right. So that's on the server level.
And also on the server level, and on the distance from your server to the
web
your
browser.
Website. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. And then the page load is then, of course, the visitor who's visiting on their in the browser.
Exactly. It depends. Maybe your computer is slow. Your computer is weak, so your browser is very slow. It takes time to render. Maybe you visit a large website which is not optimized, and it's regardless of the server itself.
Right.
Okay. So this is very important to differentiate between those two. And if you see on every Lighthouse audit, you can go to page speed test, for example, and you can see that there's an audit. There's a lot of audits. One of them is reduce initial server response time. This one is important because when it's delayed, when the server responds slowly, or you get a response slowly, all of the other metrics are pushed back again, and they're affected from this.
Right.
So it's important
being able to reduce that TTFB will have a big impact on
exactly. And
LCP.
There are some tactics to improve it. Okay. And let's break them down. I'm sure that you've heard of caching.
Yes.
And applying caching layers.
And definitely clearing the cache.
Clearing the cache is the magic trick that does everything.
Right.
Once you click on it, everything works. But clearing your cache is not something that you should do often. Why? Cache is a layer that saves. It's more efficient way of loading assets. It's not optimal.
What exactly is cache?
Cache is storing the data that should be served by the server on a side bucket. Let's call it like this. And whenever someone wants this content, wants this information, it pulls it out from the memory without rendering and processing, and brings it to the customer.
So it's creating a temporary copy of your website or specific files that are needed, and so it doesn't have to reproduce that each time people visit the website.
So you don't have one cache layer, you have multiple cache layers, and I think that the three major ones are: the first layer is the bytecode cache, which is represented maybe by opcache. Okay, This is the first caching layer. What it represents is the actual code that is being executed by your server, is represented by PHP files mostly. And PHP files are files stored in file storage or in disk. And reading and writing from disk is a slow operation mostly. So OP cache or bytecode cache basically takes this code, and stores it in the memory, which is faster to fetch. And once it happens, you can get faster rendering and responses. So this is the first layer of how to optimize and apply cache to your website. The second layer is asset caching. What are assets? Are assets, for example, assets.
So when you say assets, I think of images and, like we said before, colors. CSS, of course.
Exactly. Assets are static assets, which can be font files, video files, images, CSS files. All of these are assets that are not changing frequently.
Right.
So you can take them and store them in your memory and serve them whenever needed. Okay, so this is the second layer of
The
caching.
color of the background's not going to change.
Color of the
image is gonna
background,
stay
if they
the same.
represented in a CSS file, yeah, you can store it, but they can be represented inline on the actual code. And the third layer of caching, by the way, the assets can be cached and can be saved later on in your CDN, but we'll discuss it in a bit.
Mm-hmm.
The last part, it's something that it has its downsides and then its benefits, is the HTML cache or post cache or page cache or whatever you like to call it. Basically, it's taking your page, your homepage, for example, and instead of me waiting time for the server to render it and going over the code and producing all the connections and producing the HTML file,
Mm-hmm.
it basically takes the HTML file once it's visited one time, saves it in its memory, and brings it back to you whenever you need it. So you don't have to reload. What are the downsides of it? You can think of one.
So if you make changes, or if they, if it's like dynamic, then of course
exactly, it's the downside of being static. The downside of being static is you can't have dynamic features in it.
Right.
There are some manipulation and tactics you can do to make it happen, to work with it as well, but maybe Ajax loading, maybe asynchronous loading, but the most of the aspect here is to take the page itself, store it, and bring it when needed.
And there's of course a lot of caching plugins and other tools that help you manage these layers of cache.
Exactly, and there are dozens of hundreds of plugins that can do this caching layer. Most of them do the same, more do features, less the others do other features, but they are all focused on adding caching layer, and based on these aspects, 3 layers. There are more caching layers, but I don't want to dwell into this. But these are the major ones.
So let's just check out how our integrated advanced caching tool on Elementor Hosting works and how it relates to what you just spoke about.
Yeah. So when we decided to implement this caching layer in Elementor website, we focused on being simple, being smart or intelligent when doing this caching, and allowing the user some flexibility.
Right.
So of course you can set it up or set it off. Most of the time when you work on a website, you don't want your caching layer active because you won't see changes frequently. It can cause some glitches. This is the first aspect. The second area, once you go live, you can enable this caching layer, and you can know that whenever a user visits the page, after the first visit, the data is stored, the HTML is stored whenever needed. This is the intelligent part of it, and can be fetched, can be served to him.
Right.
The second aspect that we decided to add is the cache timeout. Every cache has its caching policy, which means how fresh I want the data to be. I can save a page that is updated, a website that is frequently updated, and have its data at the cache timeout defined for, let's say, 1 hour.
So 1 hour, it means it saves the cache, and then after 1 hour, it will purge it, will recreate a new one and push it to make sure.
Whenever a new visit will reach to the server,
right,
a new version will be applied and be saved until it will expire as well. This applies to assets and HTML files, right?
So you would keep the cache timeout relatively low when you for sure need to make sure that changes are applied. Could be during a campaign or some other.
And again, without doing it, you can, for example, if I have a stale website, something that is not changing frequently, I can add the cache timeout to the 30 days. I don't mind it.
So the benefit of being it longer, of course, is that it's more optimal.
It's more optimal. It serves faster. The downside, it can be outdated from time to time.
Right.
And to overcome this obstacle, first of all, we defined the sweet spot of 7 days a week for caching layer, for every caching page or asset. And the second part of it, we added some predefined rules that can clear cache whenever you do some changes on your website. For example, when I hit update on every post or every page, we clear the archive or clear the homepage, just to make sure that your visitors get the latest page.
Okay.
And to add some more flexibility, we added 2 fields. The first field is exclude from cache. This allows you to specify a path. Let's say my website have a section of news, and all of the pages under news settings are dynamic ones that represents other posts as well, other news. And I want it to be fresh on every visit. So I can add on every update of my website, just on the path of /news/ remove the cache on every update, on every change, on every clearing cache, clear everything under this path. So this can be represented. And again, we have added some predefined rules here.
Right.
You can see them once you have WooCommerce, once you visit the account page, the API you have on WooCommerce, the WP-JSON, all these are...
The advanced caching tool already from the get-go has specific rules defined to make sure that the experience is optimized, of course. And you can really have granular control by adding these rules over here. As some of them can be very, very specific. So we actually have a help doc to help you out with that. And we've got some people in the live chat helping out here and answering questions. And so if you can go ahead and share that link in the live chats, just so it's accessible to you to see those rules and just in general how advanced caching works. Right. You can go ahead and do that. And that takes us to
the always clear from cache option. And to be short, sometimes you want your page to be every time cleared from cache. You can specify it here. And every time the clear cache operation happens, I'm sorry, I just mixed up with the previous explanation. The previous was always clear from cache, and now is the exclude from cache what I don't want to cache entirely. Okay, this is these two parts, and you can see them and see their explanation. If I want to clear cache entirely, just clear everything, reset everything, just to make sure I'm using a fresh version of my website, just click on this button. You can see the indication that it went smoothly, and then you're set. So this is it about website performance. But I don't think the caching layer is the only thing that you can conduct in order to improve your website performance. So as I mentioned previously, the distance from your location, your physical location, to the server physical location
plays a big role.
It plays a big role because if I can visualize it on a map, I can see that I have a map of, let's say, the world, let's say the entire area. Right. My server is in Germany.
Right, that's a physical server. That's where the files are situated.
And I visit from Northern America. Once I click on the button, the data needs to transfer from Northern America to Germany and go back.
Fiber optic cables, what's that? Under the
Atlantic, yeah. And this takes time,
right?
Of course, let's look at electricity.
Well, that's the speed of light. Still, that's physical distance.
And can be cluttered and can be have some jams in the road. So it happens, and it can affect it. So there's a tactic, a highly spreaded one called CDN, Content Delivery Network.
Right.
What it means, when I serve static files of my website, let's say HTML files, assets, images, videos, etc., I can spread them around the world. I can distribute them throughout some data centers. And once I try to reach out to any of my website, let's say you can visualize it, you can see it here on the map that you see, one data center responds to every one in the world.
Right.
Or the contrary, you have a content delivery network that distributes your content, copies of your website throughout the world. And whenever I need some copy, it can be next to my position, next to my location. So if I'm in Northern America, I'll get it. If I'm in Belgium, I'll get it from the Belgium one.
So the distance is really, it's a lot shorter, the physical distance.
Exactly.
And which highly affects...
It is very important. One pitfall, it's not downside, but you have heat rate in cache and in CDNs. It takes time for the data to be updated across all of your locations. So it's something important you should keep in mind when doing this and optimizing your website. Okay, so by the way, in Elementor Advanced Caching, this layer is already set in store.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about CDN. We utilize a Cloudflare enterprise grade CDN, Content Delivery Network, and apply some rules and optimizations to make it work faster. So this is something they should take into consideration. Yeah.
It's Elementor Hosting has the enterprise grade CDN integrated with advanced caching tool, just like you mentioned. And we also have a special feature that's basically autoscale. Depending on the demand of the website that's being visited, it can scale dynamically to supply that with resources that are needed. So if there's a spike, then there will definitely be enough resources available. Can you delve into how that works?
I think we've worked hard, and I think we can show it maybe on the past year on Elementor Hosting, and again on Elementor Editor as well, to understand what we can do to optimize the behavior. And I think there's one graph that you can present that represent everything. Google has its own project called HTTP Archive, and Crux project, Chrome UX project, that represents field data, actual behavior from the visitors themselves on how they optimize, how the website optimized worked for them. And here in this graph, you can see 4 lines. The blue one represents the 75th percentile of all websites across the globe, the behavior, the percentage of visits that passed Core Web Vitals test.
Right.
Okay. You can see it here. Under it, you can see a green line that represents WordPress websites. Under it, you can see the pink one that represents Elementor websites. And again, it's not that Elementor is lousy at performance, but how you build your websites and how you and when you host them and how you optimize them is not optimal.
So the pink line, it's Elementor websites, but it's hosted on different platforms.
Exactly.
But that's this line that we see.
The orange line that you can see here is Elementor Hosting, and Elementor Hosting line trending up. And you can see since we started working on it, it dramatically inclined, and you can see the improvement and the stability, and it exceeded WordPress. So it's best for WordPress websites and Elementor websites.
It's meaning that Elementor websites that are built and hosted on Elementor Hosting, they outperform.
Now let's discuss what's the scaling and what we did to optimize it.
Yes.
So in order to optimize the behavior, we did several things. Again, we mentioned the caching layer, which is very important, the CDN layer, which is very important, but we worked under the hood as well. We created a unique architecture that is basically a cloud architecture, no server architecture that can scale. If we look at the old world, you had a dedicated server or a shared server that has its own resources. It has its CPU, it has its memory, disk, etc. All of this may cause some clogging and can cause some slowness. If you have a lot of visitors, it can shut down your server from time to time. Our infrastructure is different. It's cloud-based computing, and it's stored on Google GCP platform, the GCP platform. Redundant, the Google GCP platform.
Right.
And you can know that whenever traffic is needed, whenever more traffic, the scale is needed, the website can scale horizontally and vertically to bring your website back to supply with your
the right
resources. Yeah.
So that's the difference between also having shared and managed hosting. This is cloud, but this
is different. Yeah. It's resources that are there for your availability whenever needed. Okay. So you shouldn't have your downtime when needed. When you run a campaign and you spend a lot of money on this campaign, you can be assured that your website will run and operate.
And we also have accelerated plugins, which is also unique to Elementor Hosting. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. When we started to think about how we can optimize more, we try to find the bottlenecks in our architecture, and we identified that one of them is this file storage, the way we store files and communicate and transfer them from place to place, the files themselves. So we applied some rules. We applied some caching layer on the files themselves, the bytecode cache, and we applied some other rules. But the most meaningful one, we thought of this like which assets are not updated from time to time, and you can't update them and edit them. These assets called plugins, and they are constructed out of files. And instead of every website holding their own file, we hold a single instance of a file, of the plugin files, and store them in a general memory that can be served to all websites with one instance. It can help improving the speed of the websites when loading files in your admin, in your front.
So this is like the website owners or the web developer. Or
the impact here is on the site owner, the editing part, not necessarily the website visitor, because you have the caching layer in CDN that makes it faster.
And you mentioned also that we used Google Cloud Platform's premium tier that's integrated with that, and it's cloud hosting. And also, maybe we can talk a little bit about how, when we're talking about scaling the website and doing that, about our static hosting, which we also just launched. Yeah.
So it's a topic that relates closely to my heart.
I know.
So I worked on this product a lot in the past year, and it's something that can be visualized or described like you take you have some downsides in WordPress. The WordPress website can be hackable from time to time because it's out there, and it can suffer from downtime from time to time because it's a live server that needs some maintenance. If I take these downsides and eliminate them and give you the power of static websites, take all of the version of your website and create static files of it, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, without a running engine in the back. Just shut it down. In this way, I get a website that is secure, virtually unhackable. You have fast speed distributed by Cloudflare CDN, again, across all of your website. And you have some dynamic glue that talks with the dynamic features in WordPress, such as comments, search, form, redirections. All of them are integrated. Those are dynamic resources that are stick together without an active server. It's called, they are rendered in the edge.
So it's a different approach to running a website. And of course,
it's not suitable for everyone, I think.
Right.
It's worth mentioning. Stores won't benefit from it because they have to keep their own dynamic capabilities. If I manage inventory, if I need to handle orders, this is something that is hard to do when you have static copies.
And then when it's static site generation, actually, like you said, when the files are created and accessible, then you basically are disconnecting the backend from the front end.
Exactly.
Which is a benefit for security, of course, because it's almost impenetrable because there's no direct line, but also comes with
its own downsides.
Right.
But again, it's not for everyone. It's for people who run some static nature sites. Let's say some basic websites that needs a lot of traffic, website that needs a leads collection.
There's a lot of also enterprise grade websites that run their website and their business on static hosting because of the security and of course that impact on being hacked and their brand and their name. And so,
and I encourage you to visit the page, the static hosting page.
But it's not for everyone.
Yeah, it's not for everyone.
All right.
Visit, see the benefits, and see if it's suitable for you. You can try it out.
Okay, cool. So this brings us to our Q&A part of our live stream. So thank you very much for still being with us, and hopefully it's interesting. It's very interesting to me. Thank you for joining and sharing your knowledge with us. I'm just going to open up the chat and see if we can take some questions and answer some questions. All right. So we've got a question from somebody here on YouTube. How to fix LCP with Elementor. Then it comes to an image, etc. How do I find out what's the problem and how to fix it?
Okay. So as I mentioned, Google introduced a tool called Page Speed Test. Or let's call it in a more general one, the Lighthouse test. You can paste in the page speed test or web page test or GTmetrix or Pingdom or every tool. You can paste your URL and see what are the problems, examine the problems. You can see that once I paste in this URL, maybe I use an unoptimized image. And this unoptimized image can be served above the fold. And when served above the fold, it blocks all the other information and it communicates slowly. So one tactic to optimize the LCP is to improve and compress the image. Recently, Elementor introduced a new plugin called Image Optimizer by Elementor,
right,
which helps optimizing images and helps optimizing the way we serve by using WebP and by optimizing all the websites with a single click in your website. So this is something you should take into consideration. You have a lot of other features and other tools that helps you. You can do it on your computer. You can go to other services. But again, this is one of the major aspects of LCP. In addition, you can apply some tactics to optimize it. Recently, we worked a lot with Google in our plugin to improve the way Elementor loads resources. For example, in the upcoming release of Elementor's version, we're going to optimize the way it loads, it lazy loads background images. So it skips the 4 first background images you have on your page, and then lazy loads all the other. It basically defers the loading of every
lazy load means that it waits until you scroll down, and only then
then it will load.
Right.
And the visitor won't notice it, but the browser and the LCP will be affected by it. In addition, we added some feature introduced in WordPress core as well, which called optimized image loading, which means the first 3 images of every website will be highly prioritized by using priority hints. It's something that is built in Elementor. Just make sure you go to Elementor in your backend, Elementor settings, features, and make sure this feature is activated. Click on it, and you can see that it's there and active, and it should optimize it.
All right. So this brings us to the end, and now we've got a special post-stream discount. And I just want to talk about Elementor Hosting. Starting at $299, Elementor Hosting plans, they get you the free SSL and the enterprise grade level CDN from Cloudflare. You also get auto and on-demand backups. You get an integrated caching tool. You also get access to SFTP and database if you can use that. And you get premium support with experts that know Elementor, they know WordPress, they know hosting. So if something's up, you can just blame them, and they'll help you out, and they do help out very fast and very good at that. And so since we're talking about all of these amazing features, as a little thank you from us for joining us over here, I'd like to give you a 10% discount on the Elementor Hosting basic plan. And let me just click over here like that. Let's change. Hold on a second. I'll just do this, that. There we go. Thank you. And on the basic plan, which will, and it isn't just any plan, just like I said, you get all of that included. You also get Elementor Pro's full suite of features, and you get 10 gigabytes of storage, 25K monthly visits, 30 gigabytes of monthly bandwidth. And so I really invite you to try it out, to use it. We are here for you. Please, if our assistants can share a link in the live chat, you can go ahead and apply that discount on a checkout. And once again, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Shiloh, for taking part and explaining us about Elementor's websites, performance, and Elementor Hosting, how it integrates all of the best tools out there. Thank you very much. And till the next live event.